that's how I open, because that's exactly what happened. And if you'd been there, if you'd seen the way people gasped when my 7-year-old daughter stepped past the bridesmaids, flower petals brushing against her shoes, a phone clutched in her tiny hand, you'd understand why I still replay that moment in my head. Everything stopped. The music, the whispers, even the officiant froze mid-sentence. And it all began with one child who refused to stay silent. My name is Jenna Carter, and I never imagined my daughter would be the one to shatter the perfect wedding image my sister spent months crafting. Trust me, Sierra, my younger sister, the bride, spent more time planning her wedding than most people spend planning their futures. She wanted a rustic glam aesthetic, which in her words meant pretty enough to look earthy, expensive enough to show off. And she wasn't shy about reminding everyone how much it cost either. From the custom arch to the imported eucalyptus bundles, everything was curated for beauty, symmetry, and Instagram perfection. That's why the moment Willow stepped forward holding that phone, everything Sierra tried to control unraveled. Before I explain how my daughter ended up at the center of that disaster, let me introduce the people involved, because their roles matter more than I realized at the time. First, my daughter, Willow. She's 7. Soft-spoken, artistic, and the type of child who notices things adults pretend not to see. She draws flowers on every scrap of paper she finds and still believes weddings are magical moments where love wins and families cheer. She'd been practicing her flower girl walk for weeks, even though no one had asked her to be one. She just believed she would be included. She believed people she loved would want her there. That kind of innocence is rare. And it's the reason what happened hit her so deeply. Then there's Sierra, my sister. Beautiful, polished, charismatic when she wants to be, and powerfully concerned with how the world sees her. She loves spotlight, status, and admiration the way some people love morning coffee, and she will do almost anything to protect her image. Sierra and I used to be close growing up, but adulthood changed her. Maybe it was her corporate job, maybe it was pressure from my mother, or maybe it was insecurity dressed up as confidence. Whatever it was, she became a person who measured everything, including family, in terms of presentation. You weren't good, you were aesthetic. You weren't included, you were selected. And if you didn't fit, you were edited out of the picture. Next is Evan Mercer, the groom. Quiet, thoughtful, and the kind of man who listens more than he speaks. He fell in love with Sierra fast and hard, believing she was everything he'd ever hoped for. A confident woman who knew what she wanted. But what he didn't know was that Sierra wanted control more than she wanted love. And behind her polished exterior, she hid things she didn't want Evan, his family, or anyone else to discover. My mother, Patricia, is another important part of this story. She loves Sierra with a kind of fierceness she never had for me. Maybe it's because Sierra is the golden child. The one who finished college without any detours, the one who married well, the one who always looked put together. Patricia believes appearances matter. She grew up poor, ashamed of hand-me-down dresses and peeling porch paint, and she never wanted to go back to that life. So she clung to image the way some people cling to religion. She believed Sierra's wedding was the pinnacle of everything she'd worked for. And then there's me, Jenna Carter. A single mother with a daughter who deserves more honesty than this world usually gives. When my ex-husband, Kyle, left us for a coworker, I became the family disappointment, the one who couldn't keep her home together. My mother never said those words directly, but they lived in every raised eyebrow and every, well, Sierra would never allow that to happen. So when Sierra announced her wedding, I knew I'd be tolerated but not celebrated. But the real shock came minutes before the ceremony, when Willow stepped into the aisle with a determination far too big for her tiny frame. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look scared. She walked as if she knew the world needed to hear the truth she was carrying. And that truth was on a phone Sierra insisted was not hers. The moment Evan unlocked it, his face changed. His eyes dropped. His jaw tightened. And for the first time that day, Sierra's perfect smile faltered. What was on that phone didn't just end a wedding. It exposed the person my sister truly was. And it all started with my daughter refusing to be invisible. Before everything fell apart at that altar, life felt like it was finally settling into something manageable. Not perfect, not glamorous, but steady. And for a single mom like me, steady felt like a luxury. Most mornings in our little townhouse started with Willow humming while brushing her hair, usually off-key, but sweet enough to make me smile even when I woke up exhausted. She's the kind of child who brings light into a room without even realizing it. She leaves drawings taped on the fridge, slips little notes into my purse, and tells strangers they have kind eyes. Sometimes I think she's the only reason I stayed sane after Kyle walked out. The divorce still weighed on me more than I like to admit. Kyle had left quickly. So quickly it felt like a scene from a movie where the husband grabs a suitcase, mutters something about being unhappy, and disappears before the credits roll. Except in real life, the credits don't roll. They stick. They follow you to work, to the grocery store, to school pickups. The whispers never really die down in small towns. People say things like, "She's trying her best," which always means she fell apart and now we're watching to see if she can rebuild. But Willow never saw me as broken. She saw me as home. And that was why Sierra's wedding mattered so much to her. From the moment Sierra announced her engagement, Willow was obsessed. She'd watch wedding videos online, pause them, and say things like, "Mom, look how she walks with the flowers," or, "I bet Aunt Sierra will pick pink petals because she likes blush colors." She practiced twirling in the living room, letting imaginary flower petals fall from her hands, and whenever she smiled at me afterward, she looked like hope wrapped in a child's body. "Do you think Aunt Sierra will let me be the flower girl?" she'd ask every few days, and I'd answer the only way a mother could. "I hope so, sweetheart. You'd be perfect." The truth was complicated. Sierra and I hadn't been close in years. We weren't enemies, but our relationship had cracks running through it like a dried-up riverbed. She built a life that revolved around image and perfection, while mine had been reshaped by survival and motherhood. Somewhere along the way, she began seeing my life as a cautionary tale instead of a sister's journey. Still, Willow adored her, and Sierra tolerated Willow as a kind of accessory, cute in small doses, inconvenient in real ones. I knew Willow didn't see that. Children don't notice arrogance unless it's pointed at them directly. And then there was my mother, Patricia. Her approval always seemed to orbit whichever daughter shined the brightest at the time. Sierra provided sparkle. I provided reality. Patricia preferred sparkle. I never blamed her entirely. I think she believed she was protecting Sierra's reputation the same way she protected our home when we were growing up, by pretending flaws didn't exist. If my mother had a motto, it would have been, "If people don't know about it, it never happened." So when Sierra's wedding planning went into full force, our family group chat became a shrine devoted to aesthetics. Sierra sent mood boards, color palettes, venue photos, and long messages about lighting, angles, and camera expectations. She talked more about how things would look than how they would feel, and my mother cheered her on, calling her our little star. I tried not to take it personally. I tried to show up, be supportive, and stay out of the way, but the more excited Willow became, the more anxious I grew. One afternoon, about a month before the wedding, Willow came running into the kitchen with a handmade crown of paper flowers. The petals weren't even the same size, but she wore it like a princess. "Mom, look, I'm practicing for the wedding." She spun in a slow circle, arms stretched out, her brown hair floating around her shoulders. I laughed and clapped, and then she asked again, "Do you think Aunt Sierra will choose me?" I knelt in front of her and held her hands. "Anyone would be lucky to have you, Willow." But deep down, I was afraid Sierra wouldn't choose her. Not because Willow wasn't good enough, because Sierra didn't value sincerity the way Willow did. She valued optics, neatness, control, and me? I represented everything Sierra considered messy. Wedding season only made the gap wider. At family dinners, Sierra would go on and on about how she didn't want too much kid energy in her photos. My mother would nod, give me a quick pity look, then change the subject. I noticed Evan stayed quiet through most of it. Whenever Sierra talked about details, he would squeeze her hand with a polite smile. But there was something in his eyes, fatigue maybe, that made me wonder if he was already seeing parts of her she didn't want anyone to see. Looking back, I realized the stage wasn't just being set for a wedding. It was being set for a truth none of us were prepared for, and my daughter was the one who would walk straight into the center of it. The real conflict began on a warm Sunday afternoon, just 2 weeks before the wedding. We were at my mother's house for what she called a family bonding brunch, though it felt more like another opportunity for Sierra to perform. She floated around the living room in her ivory sundress, waving her freshly manicured hands as she described the centerpieces for the 10th time. Willow sat beside me on the couch, hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes following Sierra with admiration. Sierra had always been larger than life to her, like a porcelain doll that could talk. And that day, Willow seemed braver than usual. She tugged lightly on my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, I want to ask her now." I smiled at her courage. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Willow slid off the couch and walked carefully toward Sierra, her small sandals tapping softly against the hardwood floor. Sierra didn't notice her at first. She was too busy telling my mother how the eucalyptus garlands needed to be spaced exactly 6 inches apart, so the visual flow felt intentional. But Willow waited patiently, her hands clasped behind her back. Finally, Sierra turned. "Yes, Willow. Do you need something?" Willow's voice was steady, hopeful. "Aunt Sierra, can I be your flower girl?" The room went still. I held my breath. Sierra's expression froze mid-smile. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was calculation, the kind she used when deciding whether something fit into the glossy picture she wanted to create. Her eyes flicked from Willow to me, as if weighing the possible consequences of both honesty and cruelty. Then she looked toward my mother. Patricia gave a tiny nod, the kind of nod that said, "Do what you have to do." Sierra turned back to Willow and exhaled sharply. "Sweetie, I already decided, and I don't want broken home kids in my photos. It ruins the aesthetic I'm going for." Willow blinked. "Broken home?" The words hit her like a slap. They hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood up immediately. "Sierra, what is wrong with you?" My mother stepped in before Sierra could respond. "Jenna, please. It's her wedding. She's allowed to curate her own images." "Curate?" I snapped. "She's talking about a child, my child, your granddaughter." Patricia sighed, annoyed. "People talk, Jenna. A messy family situation can overshadow the event. We want everything clean and elegant." Willow stared down at her shoes, cheeks flushed, fingers twisting together. I knelt beside her, but she wouldn't look at me. Not yet. She was trying to understand how someone she loved could say something so small and sharp. "Sierra," I said quietly, "you could have just said no. You didn't have to insult her." Sierra rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. I'm being practical. This wedding is extremely important to me. Every detail matters. I'm not going to let anything throw off the vibe." "The vibe?" I repeated. "She's a child, not a color scheme." My mother stepped forward again, voice clipped. "Jenna, please lower your voice. This isn't the time. Sierra is under enough pressure without you making it worse." I stared at both of them, stunned by how quickly they closed ranks. Willow pressed her face into my side, small shoulders trembling. That was the moment something in me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. This wasn't just a wedding preference. This was a pattern, a belief system, a hierarchy my mother and sister upheld at the expense of decency. I gathered Willow's things, thanked my mother mechanically, and left before my voice cracked. In the car, Willow whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Some people care too much about appearances. That has nothing to do with you." But she was quiet the whole ride home. I thought the worst was behind us. I thought Sierra had said the most hurtful thing she could possibly say. I was wrong. The next blow came 3 days later when I stopped by the venue to drop off a necklace Sierra claimed she'd forgotten. I wasn't even supposed to enter her bridal suite, but one of the coordinators waved me through. Sierra didn't notice me at first because she was whispering harshly to someone behind the dressing screen. "Just make sure the phone stays off. I already told you I don't want anyone seeing that, especially Evan." A deep male voice responded. "Why do you still have it? You should have deleted everything." "Because I might need it later," she snapped. "Stop panicking." I froze. When Sierra finally spotted me, she jolted, eyes wide, then plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, Jenna, didn't hear you come in." I handed her the necklace, pretending not to have heard anything, but she watched me with suspicion, like someone guarding a landmine. That evening, Willow came to me holding her tiny purse. "Aunt Sierra, ask asked me to do something for her," she whispered. "She gave me something to give Mr. Evan during the wedding." My heart stopped. "What did she give you?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a phone. Not a child's phone, an adult's, sleek, locked, secretive. "She told me to give it to him when the music starts," Willow said. "She said it wasn't hers." And just like that, I knew the real conflict wasn't about flower petals or aesthetics. It was about the truth Sierra was trying to hide, and she was using my daughter to deliver it. By the time Willow handed me that sleek phone from her little purse, the air in our living room felt different, heavier, sharper, charged with something I couldn't name yet. I stared at the device in her hand, its black screen reflecting her innocent face. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "why did Aunt Sierra give this to you?" Willow held the phone carefully, like it might break if she breathed too hard. "She said I'm supposed to give it to Mr. Evan when the music starts tomorrow. She said people won't blame a kid. And she said it's not hers." "It's not hers," I repeated. She shook her head. "She made me promise. She said she needed help." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Sierra wasn't just hiding something. She was enlisting a child, my child, to deliver whatever truth. She was too scared to handle herself. I sat beside Willow on the couch and gently cupped her cheeks. "Honey, did she tell you why she wants Evan to have this?" "No," Willow said. "She just said it would be better if I did it instead of her. She said if she gave it to him, it would ruin everything. But if I did it, people might understand." People might understand. Understanding was not what Sierra was after. She wanted plausible deniability. I realized then that Sierra wasn't just protecting her image. She was laying groundwork, arranging chess pieces, shifting responsibility, and she expected my daughter to be her pawn. My first instinct was to call Sierra immediately and demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was Willow's trembling hands. Maybe it was the memory of Sierra whispering behind that dressing screen. Maybe it was the gnawing feeling that whatever was on that phone could change everything. I needed clarity before confrontation. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "how did Aunt Sierra give you the phone?" Willow thought for a moment. "She pulled me into the bathroom at Grandma's house. She said she needed someone she could trust. She said bridesmaids would ask questions, but kids don't. And she told me to hide it in my purse." I felt sick. Did she say anything else? "Just that I should walk up when the music starts. She said, smile sweetly, hand it to him, and walk back." Willow mimicked Sierra's tone, light, fake, rehearsed. I closed my eyes. I could practically hear Sierra thinking, if Evan explodes, at least the blame falls on the innocent messenger. When I opened my eyes, Willow was staring at me, her expression soft but deeply worried. "Mom," she whispered, "did I do something wrong?" I hugged her tightly, pressing my cheek against her hair. "No, baby, you did nothing wrong. You did exactly what someone you trusted asked you to do." She leaned into me. "But I don't want to make anyone mad. I just want to help." And that was the moment I knew the decision wasn't about the phone. It wasn't about Sierra. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about Willow. My daughter saw the world in black and white, truth and lies, kindness and cruelty. She didn't understand deception or image management. She only understood doing what was right, even when it was hard. I pulled back and looked her in the eyes. "Willow, what do you think we should do?" She bit her lip, thinking hard. "Aunt Sierra told me not to tell you, but that didn't feel right. I don't want secrets. And Mr. Evans should know the truth if she's scared to tell him." Her voice wavered, but the determination in her eyes didn't. I realized something profound. My daughter wasn't being used as a pawn. She was choosing to be a protector. "Okay," I said quietly. "If you want to do the right thing, I'll support you. But you don't have to go through with this alone." She shook her head. "No, Mom. I want to be the one to give it to him. He's nice. He always talks to me at Grandma's house. He always asks about my drawings. I think he deserves to know whatever she's hiding." Her innocence didn't weaken her. It strengthened her. That night, after Willow fell asleep, I held the phone in my hands for a long time. I didn't unlock it. I couldn't even if I wanted to. But the weight of it, felt like the weight of a secret begging to be uncovered. I thought about confronting Sierra, about warning her that I knew what she was doing, but something told me that would only make things worse. Sierra would twist the narrative, deny everything, accuse me of meddling. And if she took the phone back, Evan would never know the truth. So I made a decision, a quiet, unshakable decision. I wouldn't stop Willow. I would protect her, stand behind her, and make sure she wasn't alone. But I wouldn't silence her. Because sometimes the truth needs a voice strong enough to break the perfect picture. And sometimes that voice comes from a 7-year-old girl. The turning point wasn't dramatic or loud. It was a quiet moment in our dim living room with a locked phone between us. A moment where a child chose bravery and a mother chose to let her. The morning of the wedding, everything looked perfect on the outside. Blue skies, soft breeze, and a white archway strung with delicate floral garlands that must have cost more than my monthly rent. Guests were arriving in pressed linen and pastel dresses, sipping from crystal glasses of lemon spritz while waiting for the ceremony to start. But inside me, everything was storm. Willow stood by the mirror in her little cream dress, the one she picked out weeks ago, just in case Aunt Sierra needed her. Her hair was brushed back in soft curls, a white clip shaped like a daisy holding it to the side. She looked beautiful, braver than I could ever be at her age. I knelt next to her, gently adjusting her shoes. "Are you sure, Willow?" She nodded. "I'm not doing it to be mean, Mom. I think he needs to know." I kissed her forehead. "Okay, then I'm right behind you." We arrived early, slipping into the back row of chairs with everyone else. Sierra had no idea Willow had the phone. She thought her secret was safely buried under makeup and designer lace. Patricia gave us a quick glance, her expression unreadable. She hadn't spoken to me since the brunch incident. She was too busy helping Sierra orchestrate her perfect day. When the music started and the bridesmaids began their slow, rehearsed walk down the aisle, I reached over and squeezed Willow's hand. She looked up at me, took a breath, and nodded once. And then, without a cue, without permission, she stood up. The audience started murmuring. Some people smiled, assuming she was a late-added flower girl. Others looked confused. Patricia's head turned sharply. Sierra, standing under the arch with Evan, stiffened. Willow walked forward, clutching the phone in both hands. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Her white dress shifted gently with each step, and her small frame stood in stark contrast to the towering arch and silk-covered chairs. I could feel every eye on her, including Sierra's, her face already paling. When Willow reached the altar, she stopped right in front of Evan and said, in the clearest voice I'd ever heard from her, "She told me to give you this phone. She said it's not hers." Silence. A stunned, electric silence that vibrated down the rows. Evan looked down at her, completely still. "Who gave you this, Willow?" Willow turned slightly and pointed to Sierra. My sister's face drained of all color. "Willow!" she snapped, voice trembling. "Honey, that's not your place." But Evan had already taken the phone. Sierra lunged toward him, reaching out with both hands. "Evan, don't. It's nothing. It's probably just some old—" He held her off with a glance. I saw his hands shake slightly as he pressed the side button. The screen lit up, and it didn't take long. No password required. She hadn't wiped it. Maybe she thought Willow wouldn't follow through. Maybe she thought Evan wouldn't believe it. Or maybe she thought she could spin it afterward. But Evan was reading. He scrolled, slowly at first, then faster. I couldn't see the screen, but I didn't need to. I saw his face change. His jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed. He froze for a full 5 seconds, then looked up. Not at Sierra. At me. And then down to Willow. "What is this?" he asked quietly. Sierra started shaking her head, hands raised like she was warding off an invisible force. "It's not mine. I told her that. Someone planted that." "You handed it to a child," Evan said, voice barely louder than a whisper. "You told her to lie for you." Now guests were shifting in their seats. The officiant looked helpless, eyes darting between them. My mother stood slowly, horror etched across her face. "What's on it?" she asked. Evan turned the screen toward her. From where I sat, I could only see flashes, screenshots, photos, text chains, names, dates. One image had Sierra in a hotel room mirror, partially dressed, grinning. Gasps rippled through the chairs. One woman whispered, "Is that her ex?" Evan handed the phone back to Willow, knelt to her level, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said. "You were very brave." Willow blinked, unsure. "Did I ruin the wedding?" "No," he said. "You saved someone." He stood, turned to the guests, and said calmly, "There won't be a wedding today." Chaos followed. Chairs scraping, voices rising, cameras snapping shut. Sierra screamed something at Evan, at me, at Willow. My mother tried to hold her back, pleading with her to compose herself. But it was over. The perfect image shattered, and the truth had been delivered by a little girl in a cream dress. When the wedding collapsed around us, it didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some dramatic movie explosion. It was slower than that, more unsettling, like a perfect glass vase sliding off a table and shattering in slow motion. You can see every crack form before the final break. After Evan announced the wedding was off, guests stood frozen in disbelief. Some whispered, some tried to comfort Sierra, but most quietly gathered their belongings and left. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Bridesmaids looked horrified, unsure whether to take their positions or run. Even the officiant stepped back as if he didn't want to be within 10 feet of the fallout. Willow walked back toward me slowly, her shoulders rising and falling with each breath. She looked terrified, not because she regretted what she did, but because she didn't know what would happen next. I opened my arms and she ran into them. "You did good, baby," I whispered into her hair. "You did the right thing." She pulled back, eyes welling. Aunt Sierra looked so mad. "She wasn't mad at you," I said softly. "She was mad at the truth." Before I could stand, Sierra stormed down the aisle toward us, her veil bouncing behind her like a shredded flag of surrender. My mother followed closely, one hand on Sierra's arm, the other trying to pull her back, whispering, "Sierra, stop. Please, just stop." But Sierra didn't stop. "You ruined my life," she shouted at me, but her finger stabbed toward Willow. "And how dare you walk up here like that? Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stepped in front of my daughter. "You are not speaking to her like that. She embarrassed me in front of everyone." Sierra's voice cracked with fury. "You put her up to this. You always hated that I was finally getting something perfect. You wanted this." I didn't yell. I didn't lash back. I just shook my head. "Sierra, she came to you for love, not a job, and you used her to hide something ugly. She didn't ruin your life. You did." Sierra's face twisted. For a moment, it seemed like she wanted to argue, deny, spin the story like she always did, but she couldn't. She crumpled in on herself, sinking onto a nearby chair, sobbing uncontrollably. My mother knelt beside her. "It's okay, sweetie," she whispered. "We'll fix this. We'll figure something out." But Patricia's voice didn't have the same sharp confidence it usually had. Behind the panic, she looked ashamed, maybe for the first time. Meanwhile, Evan approached quietly. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked heartbroken. "Jenna," he said softly, "can I talk to Willow?" I nodded and stepped to the side. Evan crouched down, meeting Willow at eye level. "I need to thank you," he said gently. "You told the truth, even though it was scary. That takes courage. More courage than most adults have." Willow sniffled. "I just didn't want you to marry someone who was lying." His eyes softened. "You protected me, and I will always remember that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded program from the wedding. He handed it to her. "Keep this," he said. "When you're older, you'll understand what you did today." Willow nodded solemnly, clutching it like a treasure. As Evan walked away, Sierra lifted her head. Her makeup streaked down her face in black trails. She stared at him with a mix of desperation and disbelief. "Evan, please, you don't understand. It wasn't what it looked like." Evan stopped but didn't turn around. "I understand enough," he said quietly. "I hope you get the help you need, Sierra." And then he walked out of the venue, calm, dignified, and done. My mother looked at me with trembling lips. "Jenna, I didn't know it was this bad." "Yes, you did," I said. "You just didn't want to see it." She didn't respond. That night, Willow fell asleep in the car before we made it halfway home. She looked peaceful, as if the weight she carried was finally lifted. I I stroked her hair at stoplights, feeling equal parts heartbroken and proud. Once we got home, I tucked her into bed. She blinked up at me sleepily. "Mom," she whispered, "was I brave today?" I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Brave doesn't even begin to cover it. She smiled softly and drifted off. As I closed her door, I realized something. For years, my mother and sister tried to label Willow as broken home, as if her worth depended on a marriage that had ended. But that day, in front of 100 guests and a collapsing wedding, she proved she was the strongest person in the room. Not because she exposed someone, not because she disrupted a wedding, but because she chose truth over image, heart over fear, courage over silence. And in doing so, she taught me, her mother, what real strength looks like. The wedding didn't break that day. The illusion did. And my daughter was the one who showed everyone the truth. When I look back on that day, I don't remember the chaos or the guests whispering, or even the moment Evan walked out of the venue and ended everything. What stays with me, what will stay with me for the rest of my life, is the image of my daughter standing in the aisle, chin lifted, shoulders shaking, but refusing to let fear silence her. People talk a lot about broken homes, like the absence of a perfect marriage somehow fractures a child. But the truth is, a home isn't broken when a relationship ends. A home is broken when honesty disappears, when kindness becomes optional, when image is valued more than love. My daughter showed me that strength doesn't come from having perfect circumstances. It comes from courage. Courage to speak, courage to protect, courage to do what's right, even when the adults around you fail to. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this story, it's this. A child who grows up in love, real love, is never broken. But a family built on lies always cracks eventually. Thank you for listening to our story. If it moved you, if it made you think, or if you found yourself rooting for Willow the way I did, then do me a favor. Like the video, share it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this. Your support means the world to me, and it helps these stories reach people who might need to hear them. I'll see you in the next one.